Fala pessoal, sejam bem-vindos a mais um vídeo do canal MJ Gameplay. Galera, agora a gente tá jogando aqui o The Last of Us Part 2, o Remastered, né, pra PS5. E vamos ver, todo mundo já conhece a história principal dele, né? Talvez depois eu vou fazer isso aqui sem volta, mas eu quero jogar a opção dos extra, né? Que é a... Ai, cadê aqui? Que é as fases perdidas. Então vamos lá, deixa eu ver isso aqui. Isso aqui depois eu acho que eu vou dar uma olhada. Bora ir nas fases perdidas. Eu já vou fazer todas aqui. Beleza, eu sei que tem spoiler, né? Provavelmente todo mundo já jogou. Vou fazer todas e eu vou colocar os comentários também dos diretores aqui. Aqui, ó. E o vídeo de... Ah, não, é ligado. Isso. Ligado, ligado. Vamos lá.
You're about to play an unfinished level from The Last of Us Part 2.
Tá falando que a gente vai jogar níveis não terminados do The Last of Us.
Is there a few sequences, and we picked 3 of the best ones, that we cut from the game. You know, often we build a game that's much bigger than what ends up being the final product. They were months away from being finished, but we wanted to give you an insight of what it's like when we built a game, because often we have this whole thing constructed and it doesn't have final art or audio or dialogue. And here you get to see the building blocks of what it's like when we first string a bunch of these levels together. This is the intro to the first deleted level, and this one is the roughest of the 3. We wanted to show more of how Jackson operates. So this is the festival where Ellie ultimately kisses Dina. This sequence would have come very late in the game as a flashback sequence while you're in the farm with Dina. And we wanted to show what is the rest of Jackson doing, and wanted to put on the stick, make it interactive. So you could see when you're outside, there are all these almost like carnival games that you can play. You could mix drinks, you could play with these kids that are playing a sort of clicker Marco Polo, sit down and listen to conversations. And all the different interactions were first or second pass, very, very early passes. The building blocks are there, but nothing is final. And ultimately, while we were very excited by the sequence, it's pretty fun and lighthearted. It just slowed things too much as we're barreling towards the end of the story at this point. So again, reminder, rough, missing audio, missing animation, missing gameplay tweaks, missing dialogue, but pretty representative of what it would have been. So enjoy.
Dando uma resumida, né, do que ele tá falando aqui, ele falou que tem algumas fases assim que tava a meses deles terminarem, mas eles tiveram que cortar do games e eles separaram as melhores para colocar aqui. Aí, inclusive, tem minigames, você pode sentar, conversar com as pessoas, com as crianças, jogar alguns jogos, só que ele falou que algumas estruturas não vão estar terminadas, algumas ações e diálogos também, que nem, por exemplo, aqui, a Ellie que tá a legenda, só que ela não tá fazendo o que tá na legenda, né? Não tinha o gruído, né, que fala, né, dela, bebendo, jogando a garrafa, bora dar uma olhada, mas não tá produto final, mas tá bem da hora, a janela tá meio esquisita ali, né? Isso aqui é o quê?
Originally, this level was going to transition us to farm. We would go all the way through to the dance, where Ellie and Dina share their first kiss. Then we would play through farm, and when Ellie plays the guitar at night, she would remember the Seth incident. So, the opening for this was a little tricky. We needed it to match at least a little what you might expect emotionally coming from prior beats, because we were already purposefully disorienting you in time and space. Remember, you just came from this huge fight. To jump straight into it would have been a little too jarring. After some back and forth, we rooted it in Ellie's nerves, calling back to her hands shaking in the theater. But this time, for a much more innocuous reason we'll find out later. She's nervous because she has a crush on Dina, who is the only reason why she's here at the dance.
Acho que eu não vou ficar clicando para ouvir esses áudios não, é só um exemplo do que a mulher estava explicando, né, do que seria esse level aqui, só que não tem legenda, deixa eu ver aqui se não tem como habilitar a legenda. Opa, Ah, não, eu acho que não. Tá... Vai, tá desligada? Ah... Ai, mas por que tá desligado? Bora deixar esse ligado aí, pra ver se mudou alguma coisa. Não tem como vir pra cá. Não tá finalizada essa parede aqui, ó, mas tá bem bonito, tá bem da hora. Não vou clicar aqui também, não tem como passar pra lá. Tem uns bonequinhos de neve ali, ó. Nossa, mas mesmo assim, apesar de não estar finalizado, tá bem bonito esse visual aqui de Jackson. Obviamente não tem como a gente pegar arma nem nada. Bora jogar esse minigame aqui. Pimba. Ah, ficou duas em pé. Que bosta. Aí, ó, ela tá falando, né, na legenda, só que não aparece o diálogo, né, porque não tá terminado. Mas mesmo assim, bem da hora. As criancinhas aqui. Aquele ali provavelmente é outro mini-jogo. Deixa eu sentar aqui. Ah, essa daí é a menina que ela fala no diário dela, né? Ou é a Dina que comenta, né? Que a Ellie tinha uma quedinha por ela, né? A Cat, eu acho que é ela, né? Não tenho certeza, não. Mas você pode ver que ela tá falando aí, ó, a boca não tá mexendo, né? Não tá finalizada, obviamente, mas tá até massa. Pra quem é fã, né? É da hora essas coisas. Bora ver se a gente vê uns rostos conhecidos aqui. Até que faz sentido eles cortar do game, porque senão poderia deixar o jogo bem lento, né? Acho que eu já vi essa mulher. Face painting, pintura na cara. Peguei. Eu acho que não vai estar finalizado isso aqui. Tem que manter R1 para escutar. É, eles estão ali atrás, né? Eu apertei triângulo e eles me pegaram, ó. Foi bem da hora. Gostei. Isso aqui é o áudio, né, dela explicando, né, o conceito desse minigame aqui, só que eu não vou apertar. Bora vir pra cá. Bloqueado, ó. Não tem como ir mais que isso aqui, não. Eu vi que tem um lugar ali pra sentar. Ah, isso aqui é pra bater marreta? Vaza, crianças. Ah, isso aqui é igual ligar o motor, né? Acho que eu fui bem. Até agora nenhum rosto conhecido. Isso aqui provavelmente ele ia sentar pra ouvir história, né? Vou só ficar aqui de boa, né? Na lareirazinha. Ó, o maluco tava me encarando ali. O que foi, tio? O que foi? O que foi? Tá encarando demais. Bora vir pra cá que a gente ainda não veio. Só falta mais um lugar ali. Uai, um homem falando comigo? Ah, aqui. Eles estão cumprimentando a ele. Capaz que estavam fazendo sacanagem aqui, né, cara? De fato. Estavam fazendo sacanagem aqui. Capaz que aqui ia ter alguma coisa. Eu não vou ficar clicando porque não tem legenda. Aí vai encher o saco. Maria. Olha, de novo essa mulher aqui. Essa mulher aqui de boné e jaleco, ela tá bem ali. Antes de eu entrar, deixa eu só ver se, como eu habilitei a legenda, se vai falar alguma coisa aqui. Se vai aparecer a legenda.
There's a hidden spot at the back that was
Ah,
just
e
a bit
agora
of fun.
apareceu.
It was highlighting Jackson's normalcy with something we would find in a real world. In the back, you would find teenagers finding some alone time with each other in a dark corner of a party. It was rewarding the player for peeking into a hidden corner, but ultimately redirecting them back to the festival. We also had versions of them smoking weed here, despite Maria's consternation, probably having gotten it from Eugene.
Agora apareceu a legenda, ó. Dá pra ver nos outros agora que eu perdi. Bora ir vendo rapidinho.
This is one of my favorite sections because I think that it achieves both the slice of life aspect of Jackson while also being a stark reminder of how dark the world that they live in really, really is. To attract attention and curiosity, one of the kids was supposed to make this adorable, messed up little clicker impression, and the others would giggle. We tried a version where if you got close enough, the kid might try and follow you a little before turning back. Since clickers are blind and move by echolocation, for this game of messed up tag, Ellie must close her eyes and listen for when the children give themselves away. The thought was that these kids are in relative safety. They still grow up with the dangers of clickers and runners, and all those lessons would embed themselves in the games that they play. When the festival got cut, they tried to preserve this moment and move it to the front of the game where the snowball fight is, as a tutorial. However, being in the headspace of a clicker doesn't really teach you how to deal with them. Eventually, it evolved, and they instead made the snowball fight, which was, I think, way more effective. For me, it's character illuminating that not only does Ellie know this game, she plays along. There's a familiarity with the kids that's really nice to see, especially because it's such a difference from the Ellie we see later, who has a sort of hollow normalcy that she's trying to get with JJ, but kind of fails. It is not a festival without one of these throwing games. This one, of course, uses our throwable system where you're often chucking explosive things or stunning things, but for a more wholesome purpose, although some people take this game really seriously. A fun aspect of this is if you did well, you could win a toy here. Ellie would place it in her pocket. If you had done this, you'd find the toy with JJ, the baby, later back at the farm. When we cut this, the toy made it through anyway because it was so cute. It is the same one you see on the tractor at the farm. Ollie the elephant. The makeup artist is pretty simple. It's one of those little in-game scenes we peppered in to make it feel like Ellie had roots in the town. Hallie, our writer, mentioned that in her mind, an ex-girlfriend of Ellie's tattooed her arm to cover up her scar. So we figured this might be the only time you get to see that. We wanted to hint at it and allude to it and make it feel like there had been so much more that had been happening and so much more that Ellie threw away.
Ó, esse aqui eu tinha perdido, ó. Bora ver o que
We
é esse
use our
aqui.
workbench a lot to make a lot of things that kill and maim and hurt people. Here, we had the silly idea of using the same feel, harkening back to the same animations, using the exact same UI to instead fix a drink. Like the workbench, you could pick your base and then you could add something to it. And at the time, we had some different reactions from Ellie based on how strong you chose to make the drink. Something we wanted to prototype though, before it got cut, was picking up some ingredients around to add, like a lime or maybe a bottle of someone's favorite whiskey or salt, like you were earning upgrades. We also toyed with having Ellie carry around the drink you made and occasionally sip it, psyching herself up to go talk to Dina inside because she's nervous. It got too noodly though, because she would need to keep placing it somewhere before she did anything, so it would have ended up more trouble than it was worth.
Então bora ver aqui se vai dar certo. Com certeza eu vou tomar uma tequila logo pra ficar doidona. É, a animação não tá finalizada, né? Mas aí ele nem ficou grog. Tava bom, né? Moço, eu ia voltar aqui até ele ficar doidona. É, eu acho que eu já vi todos já. Quer ver? Foi 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, são 7. Tá faltando um. Pelo que eu contei, tá faltando um. Foi um lá dentro. Porque aquele ali é o 7 de 7. Esse aqui já foi aberto. Esse aqui também já. Uai, agora eu não sei onde está o último. Será que é o da Maria? Não. Uai. Ou será que já foi o 7? Ó, porque foi um lá dentro. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 das crianças, 6 no coreto. Cara, não sei onde está o último. Não sei onde está o último. Vai assim mesmo. Vai, da onde que o Tommy veio? Eu tinha olhado ali e não vi ele. Bem interessante. Bora pra próxima. Essa aqui parece que é massa. É, deixar ligado também tudo.
In this second deleted level, which is an extended sequence of the sewers in Seattle, this comes on the heels of where Ellie goes into a building and she survives an attack by stalkers and gets thrown out of a window and gets swept away by the current. And then we cut this section that used to be there in the final game. Now you will get to play it. So this was a way to get a bit more interesting puzzles, interesting traversal, figure out how Ellie can navigate the sewers with the fighting current. Ultimately, with a lot of these levels and these sequences, the reason why we cut them more for pacing purposes. But here it is for you in this very kind of raw form that part of it will feel finished, parts of it will feel like assets are missing as far as audio, animation won't be final, but it's a glimpse into what a game looks like when it's months away from finishing. Enjoy.
É, foi o que ele falou no outro, né? Muitas partes vão estar faltando quando faltava meses ainda, né, pro jogo terminar.
Sai de cima de mim!
É, que parece que já começou, já é eu. É, tô controlando a Ellie. Opa. E agora? Beleza.
Delícia.
Ó, tinha um negócio. Ah, nem vou voltar lá. Bora ver o que vai falar aqui.
The ladder acts as an immediate goal for the player, but being able to climb out is not going to be so easy. To keep levels interesting and engaging, we alternate between positive and negative values the player experiences. Here, it's a positive to have found a ladder, but then a negative to discover it's not the solution. But then another positive to identify the next short-term goal of the doorway. By alternating between these opposing values, we give players what they expect, but not how they expect it.
Tá. Tá.
Aham.
Tem que ter outra saída.
Beleza. Aí esse aqui foi o que eu ouvi. É pra lá mesmo, né? Acredito que sim. Tá só o breu aqui.
This level, internally known as Fine Nora, was quite long in duration as we had to make Ellie traverse a far distance to the opposite side of downtown Seattle. The sewer section was originally longer than what we released the game with, approximately 10 minutes more. This was one of the few areas of the game that used water flow as part of a traversal puzzle. The player has to go upstream to use the current to get to the platform to reach the other side. We mostly cut this mechanic game wide, however it remained in essence in the section swimming to the aquarium as Ellie when you were avoiding the waves.
Essa parte aqui eu usaria as correntezas como quebra-cabeça pra fazer isso aqui, beleza. Isso aqui tava fácil. Ó, mas o túnel ele tá bem feito, hein? Podia ter deixado, né? A gente que é fã gosta. Provavelmente vou ter que pular pra lá,
When
será?
players reach the doorway and enter into the room, they're faced with a dead end. The real reason for this dead end room is that on the reversal, when exiting back out of the doorway, players are faced with the route onwards. A pipe that they'd not been able to see when they were swept past it on the way in, and something that was hidden from view when on the side platforms. The intention here being that the only option is to go off the standard path in order to search for a way out.
Olha só, tô com as armas aqui, cara. Bem da hora. Eu não sei se a gente vai usar isso aqui. Deixa eu ver. Não, por enquanto não. Eu vou ter que pular, né? Deixa eu ver se não tem como subir mais. Não, vai ter que pular mesmo.
Ah, me tira desse lugar, caralho.
Throughout the rest of the level, we also used light to indicate to the player that they were heading in the right direction. At each turn, however, we blocked the direct route forward. Players would know that they just have to keep finding alternative paths, promoting those feelings of being desperate and trapped. We slowly
mas
introduced
tá
the
na
player
cara,
to
né?
consider climbing into smaller pipes and crouching in these tight spaces. This is to slowly build up to and encourage the player to climb into such
Subindo
small
e
pipes
saindo.
that they'd have to be crawling on their
É só
stomach,
continuar subindo e
which is
sair.
something that the player previously may not have recognised as a playable space, let alone the desired route they need to take.
Uai, e aqui? Ai, caraca. Não era pra ter caído aqui não, mas deu certo. Não, mas deu bom. Bora ver o que vai
We
falar
added
aqui.
a tiny space just to reward the player's exploration with a pickup item, and we made sure it was
sim.
something that made sense that you'd find in this area. A canister and all the garbage that had been washed into the sewers from the surface.
Isso aqui vai ser praticamente a mesma coisa. Eu não
We
sei se eu
loved
vou
the
ficar
idea of
apertando
making Ellie
todos.
prone through a tiny dirty pipe in order to get out, as it was a great opportunity to use our prone
Não perde
mechanic.
a cabeça,
A
Ellie.
unique camera setup was created to support crawling in these pipes, as the standard prone camera is much higher above the player. We also created custom collision in order for Ellie to maneuver in these tight spaces easily. Initially, the oblong collision capsule around her character caused issues crawling around corners. We put extra effort into the custom corner collision, so the movement experience is as smooth as the main game.
Olha, já que eu comecei a apertar todos, eu
In
vou
order for the
apertar aqui
player to
pra
feel
ver.
cramped, claustrophobic, and desperate, we'd been enforcing the traversal mechanics that allow for a tight environment, which promote these feelings. We introduced the use of the squeeze through so that we can keep the player feeling enclosed and tight, but without repeating the same geometry. Here we change from low ceilings with wider walls to high ceilings and tight walls to change up the spatial pacing and keep the level from repeating itself.
Pois é, será que é por aqui? Bora ver aqui em cima. Ah, ela não sobe. Deixa eu só fazer mais um teste aqui, mas ela não quis subir não. Não, não sobe mesmo não.
Ah, que se foda o universo.
Pois é, esses áudios, né, tá dublado. Será que a dubladora dublou pra esse remastered aqui? Ou será que
Lugar bem
pegou,
merda pra morrer.
ou pegou do jogo normal mesmo? Porque eu não lembro dela falar esses diálogos no The Last of Us Part 2, não. Às vezes eles só reaproveitaram o áudio, né, mas eu não tô lembrado dela falar esses áudios.
Originally, we had the waterline much higher here, so players had to swim through this tight tunnel. However, from watching user test feedback, it was occasionally causing people to discount the route entirely and turn back on themselves. So to avoid any risk of this happening in the final game, we present a lower water level so the tunnel is easy to see and commit to using. Although this isn't as impactful without the prone swim, it's the better decision as it means a smoother experience for the player with no backtracking frustration.
Tô vendo os detalhes aqui da Ellie.
As we surface from the water and over the crest of the slope, we reveal what is further in this tunnel. A clicker that has sprouted and fungus has grown on the sides of the pipe. It was great to see people who user tested this area becoming increasingly worried as we forced the player to squeeze past the fungus and inches away from the clicker's face, all the time not being sure whether the clicker might be alive or attack them. Although we aren't as cruel as to force a clicker attack in such close proximity, we do have a payoff for this moment. This clicker momentarily turned into Joel to show Ellie's PTSD from what happened to Joel at the start of the game. Ultimately, we decided to save this moment for the farm level, as it was more impactful there because it could become the centerpiece of that experience. Whereas in the sewers, we weren't able to make it as much of a narrative point and give it the breathing room and reaction time that it deserves, given the tight space.
Pois é, será que o caminho é por aqui mesmo? Nossa, pesado, hein? É, não dá mais pra voltar. Eu perdi aquele áudio lá. Tinha um áudio lá.
Merda!
Droga. Provavelmente era sem
For the final
saída.
section, we eventually opened you out into a wider area as you traverse through such tight spaces leading up to this. So changing the environmental pacing makes it begin to feel like we're coming to the end of Ellie's ordeal. An earlier iteration used the current that we'd shown at the start for a slightly tougher traversal puzzle to conclude the sewers. The ladder was clearly visible from most of the area, but the player was faced with a fast-flowing torrent of water they couldn't cross. If the player attempted to jump into the water, they were not able to swim across the ladder due to the water's speed, but instead they had to traverse the pipe running along the top of the space in order to get across the water.
Pois é, mas eu tô até vendo ali o cano. Como é que eu vou fazer pra ir pra lá? Ah, é por aqui, ó. Isso aqui eu não lembro se tava no jogo original. Vai. Ah, tá. Por ali, ó. Não tinha visto.
Using this pipe was retained in the iteration we shipped with, as it's the last of the extreme methods Ellie has to undergo in order to escape the sewers, and what she will go through in her pursuit of revenge.
Não tô lembrado se esse aqui tá na versão final. Ele falou que manteve, né? Mas eu não tô lembrado não dessa fase.
The last ladder climb is quite lengthy, and although we could have trimmed it down to a shorter climb, we liked how this last segment of the journey built anticipation for whether there was success at the top or not after all you've been through. Ultimately, the ladder exits out into the subway station, which is how it connects in the final game. Ellie then has to find her way to the hospital from here, crossing paths with the scars for the first time.
Deu 15 de 16, ficou faltando um. Será que foi aquele que eu perdi? Eu acho que não, né? Não sei, porque geralmente ele não conta o que você abriu, né? Mas a ordem provavelmente era pra ter mais um escondido ali, né? Mas eu não vi, bora ver esse último aqui.
For this third and final deleted level, what we call the boar hunt sequence, this was a sequence pretty late in the game. It was right after the whole Seattle Abby sequence where Abby spares Ellie. And then we wanted to come back into Ellie's story, but keep it a bit mysterious of how much time has passed, where is Ellie now? So we're coming in on Ellie and she's following a trail of blood. And we wanted to mirror in a way the deer hunt sequence from the first game, but this time do it with a boar. And there's something with Ellie that now she can't let go of this violence. She's pursuing it, even against this innocent animal. This was another opportunity to show how the violence that Ellie has experienced, the violence that she witnessed being afflicted onto Joel, is still sticking with her. And she's still experiencing these PTSD moments. This was a sequence that was pretty far along and was cut pretty late in production. Parts of it are still really rough, but the gameplay, the building blocks were all there. I think you'll have fun to see, like, again, a rough, unfinished sequence that you can play. You can see all the way to the end, and including a cinematic that we end up cutting. And the remnants of the sequence ended up being mentioned in Ellie's journal. So this part of the story that we developed still made its way into the game as kind of optional stuff that you could read about, but here you get to experience it. So as a reminder, this is pretty rough, months away from being finished, but you get to see it now.
Nossa, esse cenário aqui tá muito bonito. Isso aqui é o áudio aproveitado. Isso aqui eu lembro que ela fala. Nossa, mas esse cenário aqui tá parecendo uma pintura de tão bonito.
So the boar hunt was one of the hardest levels for me to work on. It was a huge challenge with the systems that we had, and we kept trying, but it never felt quite right. Originally, the level happened after the Jackson Festival, which also got cut, but before Farm. Once the festival got cut, it became the prologue to Farm. The intended experience is that we jump forward in time after the fight with Abby in the theater. We don't know where Dina is. We likely assume she's dead because she was just bleeding out. Ellie is alone. Her hair is short. So maybe this is the future or the present. And she's hunting. Hunting who? Abby still?
Eu vou lá na frente dar uma olhada, mas deixa eu só ver pra onde vai os rastros do javali. Beleza, eu vou voltar lá agora, ó, que a gente teve que dar a volta, né? Pera aí. Deixa eu ir ver o que tem lá mais pra frente. Essa fase aqui ela tá bem grande. Ó, a gente vai ali pro outro lado. Aqui tá fechado, ó. Aqui é um morro. Tá bloqueado, não passa pra lá. Ó, mas essa fase aqui, ó, tava quase finalizada mesmo, ó, que nem ele falou. Bora dar um tirinho? Bala infinita.
In early iterations of the fight, it was more arena-like. The player slowly whittles down the boar's health. Ellie gets more visceral and more vicious. We get a little worried about her. As the boar gets weaker, more panicked, more feral, and we start feeling sympathetic to the boar, was the hope. In all of these iterations, especially of these wider areas, it required custom AI and scripting to make sure it continued to feel organic as an animal, but we really needed it to do specific stuff. It needed to be able to close distances really, really quickly. It needed to charge to attack, but we wanted the feeling of hunting, so we needed to track it down from afar. And we also needed to discourage the player from attacking the boar when it's that close, or it would kind of turn into this melee kerfuffle. How do we do this in our world while keeping the boar believable?
Entendi. Ia ficar da hora, hein? Acho que eles tiraram mais por causa da... sei lá.
We must have gone through 5 or 6 iterations of the boar fight and all, and every single time it changed pretty drastically. We split it into clear phases, where one was like all long range. We tried another where you're getting close and you get the jump on it quite literally. You're jumping off of a rock to attack it. And then finally, we tried a bunch where you almost sort of go around a bunch of trailers and try and wrestle it. We uncovered after some time that taking down a boar over several phases felt very laborious and a little dramatic. It was comically long, it felt too boss-like, a little too gamey. We decided to cut the first few phases, and we opted for a cold open after the boar had already been hurt off-screen. So that allowed us to focus
E
on
aqui a
feeling
gente
like we're
provavelmente ia estar
closing in on
caçando o
prey
javali,
and to
né?
introduce the boar when it was at its most dangerous. Already hurt, already feral, much too close for comfort. And so the thinking was it would bring us more into Ellie's mindset. Is this really hunting for food, or is she hunting for some other reason?
Ia ser pesada essa cena aqui, né? Mas olha, tá muito bem finalizado, ó. Se não tiver muito tudo finalizado, é uma coisa ou outra. Olha só, cara.
The gas station was built to highlight the boar's destructiveness. Since it's cramped, the boar feels larger. We also feel trapped with it, though perhaps it's trapped with us. When it charges, it gets to us quickly, so we must be on our toes. This made it more aligned with Ellie's sort of hunting for trouble mindset. Listening became more important, as well as moving around slowly so it didn't hear you. Could you spot it before it saw or heard you? And could you get a shot off quickly enough so you could dodge out of the way? Or is the shot worth the cost after? It feels like a gamble. By the end of the fight, everything would likely be in shambles. The boar would burst through the back, and Ellie would follow it and finally enact revenge.
Só o balanço ali que eu vi agora, assim, que tá um pouquinho mal feito, né? Mal feito não terminaram, né? Mas tá muito da hora. Nossa, deixa eu ver se eu consigo tirar uma captura daqui. Modo foto. Caraca. Esse pá, isso aqui vai ser a thumb, hein? Olha só, menino. Tá meio embaçado. Pera aí. Tô achando meio embaçado. Acho que é porque não tá finalizado, né? E não ficou 100%. Olha só. Não, na verdade... Tava escondendo o rosto dela. Aqui, ó, essa. Depois eu faço uma thumb dessa parte aí. Vamos lá ver o javali. Deu uma furadinha no vidro, mas nem tanto. Atravessou, ó. Atravessou ele e bateu na lataria do carro ainda. Tá até... só não quebrou, só isso que é mentira. Ah, isso aqui quebrou. Aô, papaizinho, ó. Rapaz. Vamos lá.
Não tô vendo nada.
Foi meio... Não tá muito bem finalizado não, mas já tá muito bom. Só faltou mais velocidade, né? Uma animaçãozinha melhor, mas a gente não pode reclamar, né? Que nem ele falou, né? Não tá finalizado. Será que a gente vai ter que caçar ele agora? Ah, ó, dá pra ver os rastros. Ah, não, esse aqui é o meu. Ele tá me farejando. Ali, ó. No caso, ele vai saber onde eu tô. Ai, caraca, errei. Ai, merda. Ah, caraca, essa fase aqui vai ser massa demais. Caramba, como é que eu... Ele só vai ficar em 2 lugares, provavelmente. Mostra a cara aí.
Acabou. Não tem pra onde correr.
Aí agora ele vai... vai morrer agora. Não vai ter jeito. Eu peguei o negócio ali no... Será que fez efeito? Beleza. Bora entrar lá pra ver. Esse aqui é o último áudio. Tem como passar aqui? Não. Ele tá morrendo ali, tá grunhando.
The boar kill was supposed to be anything but glorious. With the boar whimpering at the back of the gas station after Ellie's relentless hunt. After this, hearing the drone that we kinda come to associate with Ellie's trauma, we would hard cut to the stream where she's washing her hands and holding rabbits that she hunted, about to return to Dina.
Isso
And
aqui
there
é
would
pra
be
ser
no mention
antes
of the
dela...
boar.
Isso aqui ia ser antes dela pegar o coelho. Na hora que ela estivesse pegando o coelho, né? Dela lavando a mão. É pesado isso aqui, hein, galera. O Joel, né? Bora ver esse trailer aqui. Acho que é o trailer que eles liberaram no YouTube umas semanas atrás. Vai ser um documentário que vai ser liberado. Esse aqui é o trailer mesmo. Esse aqui foi o trailer de 2016, eu acompanhei. Bora ver um pouquinho. Bom, galera, então é isso aí. Eu vou ver se depois eu vou fazer esse sem volta aqui. Tem como importar os dados do PS4, né? Depois eu vou ver como é que funciona isso aqui. Mas se você assistiu até aqui, deixa seu like, se inscreve no meu canal, que eu vou estar trazendo sempre novidades aí pra vocês, beleza? Valeu, até o próximo vídeo. Até!